The torch flickered against the damp stone walls of the abandoned fort, and Zachary Owens held it higher as he descended into what he assumed would be an empty cellar, only to freeze when the light fell upon a figure slumped against the far wall, wrists bound in iron chains that had been driven into the ancient stone itself. She was an orc woman, her green skin marked with bruises and dirt, her dark hair matted and tangled around pointed ears, and when she lifted her head to look at him, Zachary saw not the savage monster he had been taught to fear, but a person whose brown eyes held nothing but exhaustion and a flicker of defiance that refused to die even in captivity. He should have turned around and left. Any reasonable man would have. Orcs were enemies, had always been enemies, and the war between their people had claimed his brother's life just 3 years prior. But Zachary had come to this ruined border fort seeking shelter from a storm, not expecting to find anyone. And now that he stood here looking at this woman who had clearly been abandoned to starve or die of thirst, he found he could not simply walk away. "I am not going to hurt you," he said quietly, setting the torch into a rusted wall sconce and approaching slowly with his hands visible and empty. She watched him with wary eyes, her body tensing despite her obvious weakness. "Human words mean nothing," she said, her voice hoarse from thirst. "Kill me or leave. I have no interest in your mockery." "I am not here to mock you." Zachary knelt a few feet away from her, examining the chains. They were old but sturdy, the kind that would require tools to break. "Who did this to you?" She laughed, a bitter sound that scraped against her dry throat. "Does it matter? Your kind, my kind, what difference does it make? Both see me as a thing to be used or destroyed." "It matters," Zachary insisted. He had a small pack with him, and he pulled out his water skin, uncorking it and holding it toward her. "Here, drink first, then we can figure out how to get you free." The orc woman stared at the water as though it might be poisoned, but her cracked lips and the desperate way her eyes fixed on the skin betrayed how badly she needed it. After a long moment, she leaned forward as much as the chains would allow, and Zachary brought the water to her lips, letting her drink slowly so she would not make herself sick. "Why?" she asked when she had finished, pulling back to look at him with confusion replacing some of the hostility. "Why would you help me?" "Because no one should be left chained in the dark," Zachary said simply. He stood and examined the chains again, running his fingers along the links and testing their strength. "I do not have anything here that will break these, but I have tools back at my camp. It is about 2 miles from here. If you can wait, I will come back." "I have been here 5 days," she said flatly. "I can wait 2 more hours. 5 days. Zachary felt something twist in his chest at the thought of anyone enduring that. "I will be as fast as I can. Wait." Her voice stopped him as he reached for the torch. "How do I know you will return? How do I know you will not bring others to finish what was started?" He turned back to meet her gaze. "You do not know. You have to trust me, and I realize that is asking something nearly impossible. But I give you my word, I will come back alone and I will free you." She studied his face for a long moment, and he wondered what she saw there. Whatever it was, she finally nodded once. "Then go. I will wait." Zachary did not take the torch, leaving it in the sconce so she would not be in complete darkness. He made his way back up the crumbling stairs and out into the evening air where the storm had passed, leaving everything wet and smelling of rain. His camp was indeed about 2 miles away, tucked into a hollow where he had been making his way south toward the settlement of Greymark. He was a traveling smith by trade, carrying his tools and working odd jobs as he moved from place to place, never staying long enough to put down roots. He gathered his hammer, a sturdy chisel, and several other tools that might be useful, shoving them into a canvas bag and starting back toward the fort at a run. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, and he did not want the orc woman to spend another night in that cellar if he could help it. By the time he returned, full darkness had fallen and the torch had burned lower. She was awake, watching the stairs, and something in her expression shifted when she saw him come down with the bag of tools. "You came back," she said, and there was wonder in her voice. "I said I would." Zachary knelt beside the chains and began examining the rivets that held them to the wall. "This is going to be loud and it might take a while, but I can break these." "What is your name, human?" "Zachary. Zachary Owens." He positioned the chisel against the first rivet and raised his hammer. "I am Orna Greydusk." She paused. "Thank you, Zachary Owens." He met her eyes for a moment and nodded before bringing the hammer down. The sound rang through the cellar like a bell, and he began the steady work of breaking her free. It took nearly an hour. The rivets were old but had been driven deep, and Zachary had to work carefully to avoid injuring Orna in the process. She watched him the entire time, not speaking, and he could feel the weight of her gaze as he sweated and strained against the stubborn metal. Finally, the last rivet gave way with a crack and the chains fell loose from the wall, though the manacles still circled her wrists. "I can break these too," Zachary said, breathing hard from exertion, "but it would be easier if you had some food and rest first. Can you walk?" Orna pushed herself to her feet, swaying slightly. She was tall, nearly matching his own height of 6 feet, with broad shoulders and the muscular build of a warrior despite her current condition. "I can walk. My camp is not far. You can rest there tonight, eat something, and in the morning when you are stronger I will get those manacles off safely." "Why would you bring me to your camp?" she asked, suspicion creeping back into her voice. "What do you want from me?" "Nothing." "I want nothing from you except to see you free and safe." Zachary picked up the torch in his bag. "But if you would rather go your own way now, I understand. I will not stop you." She looked at him for a long moment, then down at her manacled wrists, then back at his face. "I have nowhere to go. My clan cast me out when I refused to participate in a raid on a human settlement. They were going to kill children, and I would not do it, so they brought me here and chained me as a traitor." Zachary felt a wave of respect for this woman who had lost everything rather than compromise her morals. "Then come with me. Rest, eat, heal. After that you can decide what you want to do." Orna nodded slowly. "Very well, I will come." They made their way out of the fort and through the darkening forest. Zachary kept the pace slow, aware that Orna was weak despite her efforts to hide it. She stumbled once and he caught her elbow to steady her, feeling how she flinched at the contact before forcing herself to relax. "Sorry," he murmured. "I should have warned you. No, I should not be so skittish. You have shown me nothing but kindness." She straightened, squaring her shoulders. "I am not used to it from humans. I imagine not. Just as I am not used to meeting orcs who refuse to harm children even at great cost to themselves." She glanced at him, something unreadable in her expression. "You lost someone to orcs. It was not a question." "My brother. 3 years ago in a border raid. Yet you helped me anyway. You are not the ones who killed him, and even if you were, leaving someone to die like that would make me no better than the worst of either of our people." Zachary pushed aside a low-hanging branch, holding it so she could pass. "Here. The camp is just ahead." He had set up in a small clearing with a lean-to shelter he had built from branches and his canvas tarp. A fire pit sat cold in the center, ringed with stones, and his pack and supplies were arranged neatly to one side. He got Orna settled on his bedroll, over her protests, and quickly built up a fire before pulling out dried meat, hard cheese, and the last of his bread. "Eat slowly," he advised, handing her portions. "Your stomach will need time to adjust." Orna took the food with shaking hands, and he watched as she forced herself to eat in small bites despite her obvious hunger. He busied himself with heating water for tea, trying not to stare but finding his eyes drawn back to her repeatedly. In the firelight, cleaned of some of the grime by the rain on their walk, she was striking. Her features were strong, her tusks small and giving her an exotic rather than frightening appearance, and when she looked up and caught him watching, he felt heat rise to his face. "What?" she asked. "Nothing, sorry." He poured hot water over herbs in his 2 tin cups, handing her one. "How are you feeling? Better? Stronger?" She sipped the tea, closing her eyes briefly in appreciation. "This is good. What is it?" "Chamomile and mint. My mother used to make it." He settled across the fire from her, cradling his own cup. "Where will you go?" "After I remove the manacles, I mean." Orna was quiet for a long moment, staring into the flames. "I do not know. I have no clan, no family who will claim me now. Perhaps south, away from the border lands. Find work somewhere, if any will hire an orc." "That will not be easy." "No, but nothing in my life has been easy. I will manage." She looked up at him. "What about you? Where are you heading?" "South as well, to Greymark. There is supposed to be work there, and I heard they are more accepting of traveling folk." He hesitated, then added, "You could come with me if you want, just until you get your bearings." "Why would you offer that?" "Because you have been alone in the dark long enough." The words came out more intense than he had intended, and he cleared his throat. "And because traveling is safer with two." Orna studied him across the fire, her brown eyes reflecting the flames. "You are a strange man, Zachary Owens, so I have been told." He smiled slightly. "Think about it. You do not have to decide tonight." She nodded and returned her attention to the food, and they fell into a comfortable silence broken only by the crackling of the fire and the night sounds of the forest around them. Zachary found himself watching her again, noticing small things. The careful way she moved her hands to keep the chains from rattling too much, the proud set of her shoulders despite everything she had endured, the intelligence in her eyes when she looked at him. He was in dangerous territory, he realized. Not physically, but emotionally. This woman was an orc, member of a people his own had been at war with for generations. Getting attached would be foolish at best and disastrous at worst. But as he watched her finish the last of the bread and lean back against his pack with a sigh of exhaustion, he found that he did not care about the sensible thing. He cared that she was free, that she was fed, that tomorrow he would break those last chains and she would never be bound again. "You should sleep," he said softly. "I will keep watch." "No, you need rest too. I will take second watch." "Orna, you have been chained in a cellar for 5 days. Sleep. I will wake you if I need to, but I doubt anything will bother us tonight." She looked like she wanted to argue, but exhaustion won out. "Very well. But if you start to nod off, wake me." "I will." She curled up on the bedroll, and within minutes her breathing had deepened into sleep. Zachary added more wood to the fire and settled in for a long night, his thoughts churning with questions he had no answers for. Morning came with birdsong and golden light filtering through the trees. Zachary had dozed lightly in the early hours but woke fully when Orna stirred. She sat up, looking disoriented for a moment before memory returned and her gaze found him across the fire. "Good morning," he said, already setting water to boil for tea and oats. "How do you feel?" "Sore, stiff, but better than yesterday." She stretched, the chains on her wrists clinking, and scowled at them. "I hate these things." "Then let us get them off you, after breakfast." They ate quickly, both eager to be done with the manacles. Zachary spread his canvas tarp on the ground and had Orna kneel with her hands on it, giving him a stable surface to work on. The manacles were solid iron, and he had to work carefully with a thin chisel to split them without damaging her skin. Orna held perfectly still, not even flinching when the work brought the metal close to her flesh. "You are braver than most people I have met," he observed as he worked on the second manacle. "Pain is temporary. Freedom is worth any amount of it. Still." He positioned the chisel for the final strike. "This is going to be loud. Ready?" "Yes." He brought the hammer down hard, and the manacle split with a crack that sent half of it flying into the grass. Orna gasped and pulled her hands back, staring at her bare wrists for a long moment before looking up at him with tears shining in her eyes. "Free," she whispered. "I am free." "You are free," Zachary confirmed, his voice thick with emotion. "No one chains you down ever again, I swear it." She threw her arms around him before either of them could think about it, and he caught her instinctively, holding her as she trembled against him. He could feel her tears soaking into his shirt, and he tightened his embrace, one hand coming up to cradle the back of her head. "Thank you," she said into his shoulder. "Thank you, thank you, thank you. You do not have to thank me. What was done to you was wrong. Anyone would have done the same." She pulled back enough to look at him, her hands still on his shoulders. "No, they would not have. Most humans would have killed me or left me there. Most orcs would have done the same." She searched his face. "You are different. You see people, not just their race." Zachary became suddenly aware of how close they were, how his arms were still around her waist and hers on his shoulders. Her lips were inches from his, slightly parted, and he could feel her breath against his skin. For a moment, he thought about closing that distance, about finding out if her lips were as soft as they looked. But it was too soon, too complicated, and she had just been freed from captivity. So he gently eased back, giving her space even though part of him wanted nothing more than to pull her closer. "We should pack up," he said, his voice rougher than usual. "If you still want to come with me to Greymark, we should leave soon to make good time." Orna nodded, her cheeks darker than usual, and he wondered if orcs could blush. "I want to come if the offer still stands." "It does, always." He stood and offered her a hand up. "Partners, then. We watch each other's backs on the road." She took his hand, her grip strong and warm. "Partners." They broke camp efficiently, Zachary teaching Orna how he packed his supplies for travel and dividing the load between them. She insisted on carrying her fair share despite his protests, pointing out that she was perfectly capable and would not be treated as an invalid. "I did not mean to suggest you were," Zachary said as they started south on the old trade road. "I was just trying to be helpful, I know, but I have spent 5 days helpless. I need to feel useful again." She adjusted the pack on her back. "Besides, I am probably stronger than you, no offense." He laughed. "None taken. You probably are." They fell into an easy rhythm, walking side by side as the morning wore on toward noon. Orna asked questions about Greymark, and Zachary told her what he knew. It was a mid-sized settlement on the southern edge of the border lands, known for being relatively progressive and welcoming to outsiders. He had never been there himself, but other travelers had spoken well of it. "Do you think they will accept me?" Orna asked. "An orc with no clan, no connections. I think if anyone will, they will. And you will not be alone. You will have me vouching for you. That matters to you. Your reputation might suffer for associating with me." Zachary glanced at her. "Then my reputation is not worth much to begin with. I would rather be known as a man who stands by his friends than one who abandons them for social approval." Orna smiled, a real smile that transformed her face. "You really are different." They made camp that night by a small stream, and Zachary showed Orna how to set snares for rabbits while he fished. By evening, they had a good meal roasting over the fire, and Orna seemed more relaxed than she had been, laughing when Zachary told her stories about some of the more eccentric customers he had encountered in his smithing work. "So this farmer wanted you to make a horseshoe for his pig?" she asked, grinning. swore up and down his pig was big enough to need shoes, and he was not wrong. The thing was massive, but pigs do not wear shoes, so I had to explain that I could make decorative bands for its legs if he really wanted, but they served no purpose. Did he buy them? He did. 4 silver for something that took me an hour and made absolutely no sense. Zachary shook his head, but he was happy, so I suppose that is what mattered. Orna laughed, the sound warm and genuine, and Zachary found himself smiling just from hearing it. She had a good laugh, rich and full, and he wanted to hear it again. They talked late into the night, trading stories about their lives. Orna told him about growing up in an orc clan, about the rigid hierarchies and constant tests of strength. She had been a warrior, she admitted, but one who had always questioned whether violence was truly the answer to every problem. "My mother understood," she said softly. "She taught me that true strength was not just physical, it was moral, ethical. Standing up for what you believed even when everyone else disagreed." Her voice caught. "She died 2 years ago. I think that is when things became harder. She was my shield in the clan. Without her, I was just the strange one who cared too much about humans." "She sounds like she was an amazing woman," Zachary said. "She was." Orna poked at the fire with a stick. "What about your family? You mentioned a brother, Julian. He was 2 years older than me, always the brave one, joined the militia to defend our town from raids. He died leading a group of farmers to safety when a warband attacked." Zachary stared into the flames. "My parents died a few years before that sickness, so after Julian, I decided there was nothing keeping me in one place. I learned smithing from an old master and started traveling." "You have been alone a long time." "Yes, but I chose it. You did not choose yours." "No, but perhaps we can be less alone together." Orna looked at him across the fire. "Is that strange to say?" "No, I was thinking the same thing." They held each other's gaze for a long moment, something unspoken passing between them. Then Orna yawned, breaking the spell, and Zachary chuckled. "Sleep. I will take first watch tonight since you took none last night. Wake me halfway through. We are partners, remember." "That means sharing the burden." "I will. I promise." She settled into her bedroll, which Zachary had insisted she keep using while he slept on his spare blanket, and soon her breathing evened out. He sat watching the fire and thinking about how much his life had changed in just 2 days. He had found a captive and freed her. He had made a friend. And if he was honest with himself, he was beginning to feel something more than friendship, something that both excited and terrified him. The next 3 days of travel passed similarly. They walked during the day, made camp at night, and talked about everything and nothing. Zachary taught Orna about smithing, and she taught him orc combat techniques, laughing when he struggled with the stances that came naturally to her greater strength. They fell into an easy partnership, each learning to read the other's moods and preferences. On the 4th day, they encountered their first real trouble. A group of 3 men on the road, rough-looking and armed, who looked at Orna with undisguised hostility. "That is an orc," one of them said, stating the obvious. "She is," Zachary confirmed, moving slightly to put himself between Orna and the men. "We are just passing through, no trouble here." "No trouble, it is an orc. They are trouble by nature." The speaker, a burly man with a scar across his cheek, spat on the ground. "What is a human doing traveling with one of them anyway? That is my business, not yours. Now if you will excuse us." Zachary moved to step around them, but they shifted to block his path. "Maybe we should do everyone a favor and put that monster down," Scarface suggested, his hand dropping to the sword at his hip. Zachary felt Orna tense behind him, and he held up a hand, keeping his voice calm but firm. "That would be a mistake. We do not want trouble, but we will defend ourselves if we must. You think you can take 3 of us?" "I know she can." Zachary smiled without humor. Orna was a warrior in her clan. She could probably handle all three of you before I even drew my knife. So I suggest we all act like reasonable people and go our separate ways. The men exchanged glances, clearly not expecting resistance. Orna stepped up beside Zachary, and he could feel the coiled readiness in her stance. She was ready to fight if needed, and something in her posture must have communicated that, because the men backed down. "Not worth it," one of them muttered. Scarface glared but nodded. "Just get that thing out of sight before someone less forgiving sees it." They moved aside, and Zachary and Orna walked past them, not relaxing until the men were well behind them. Once they were out of sight around a bend in the road, Orna let out a shaky breath. "Thank you for standing up for me. Always. That is what partners do." Zachary glanced at her. "Are you all right?" "Yes, just angry and grateful, mostly grateful." She touched his arm briefly. "You could have avoided confrontation by leaving me. Many would have. I am not many. You are stuck with me now, Orna Greydusk." She smiled, and the warmth in it made his heart skip. "Good. I find I do not want to be unstuck." They reached Greymark late on the 5th day of travel. The settlement was larger than Zachary had expected, a sprawling town of wood and stone buildings with actual streets and a market square. People moved about their business in the evening light, and Zachary noted with relief that there was diversity here. Humans certainly, but also a few dwarves, what looked like a half-elf, and even one other orc working at a stable. "See," he said to Orna, "you are not going to be the only one." "That helps," she admitted, though he could see tension in the set of her shoulders. They found an inn called the Wayward Traveler and negotiated for a room. The innkeeper, a round woman with shrewd eyes, looked Orna over but simply quoted the price without comment. Zachary paid for a week, figuring that would give them time to find work and more permanent lodging. The room was small but clean, with 2 narrow beds and a wash basin. Orna immediately went to the basin and began scrubbing her face and hands, and Zachary realized she had not had a proper wash since before her captivity. He remembered seeing a bathhouse down the street. "There is a bathhouse nearby," he said. "Why don't you go get a proper bath?" "I will stay here and guard our things." Orna looked at him with such gratitude that he felt his chest tighten. "Are you sure?" "Absolutely. Take your time. Enjoy it." She gathered the few clean clothes from his pack that might fit her, baggy but serviceable, and headed out. Zachary used the time to clean his tools and think about their next steps. He needed to find smithing work, and Orna needed something as well. Perhaps the stable would hire her, or maybe one of the shops needed a guard. She was certainly capable. When Orna returned an hour later, Zachary almost did not recognize her. She had washed and braided her dark hair, scrubbed away all the dirt and grime, and the borrowed shirt and trousers, while too big, were clean. She looked younger, lighter, as though a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. "You look like you feel better," he said, trying not to stare. "I feel like a new person, or perhaps just like myself again." She sat on one of the beds. "Thank you for this, for everything. I do not know how I can ever repay you." "You do not owe me anything, Orna. I did what anyone should have done. But no one else did. You did." She stood and crossed to where he sat, taking his hands in hers. "Zachary, I need you to understand something. You saved my life, not just by freeing me, but by giving me hope again. By showing me that there is kindness in this world, even between enemies." He looked up at her, acutely aware of her hands holding his, of the intensity in her eyes. "We are not enemies. No, we are not." She hesitated, then said, "We are friends. And maybe, if you want, we could be more than that." His heart was pounding. "Orna, I do want that. I have wanted it since that first night by the fire. But I did not want to pressure you or make you feel like you owed me anything, or move too fast after what you had been through." You are not pressuring me. You have never pressured me. That is one of the things I love about you." She said the word love so easily, and he wondered if she realized it. "I am choosing this. I am choosing you if you will have me." Zachary stood, and now they were face to face, barely a breath apart. "I will have you now and always if you will have me too." "I will." He kissed her then, or maybe she kissed him. It did not matter. What mattered was the feeling of her lips against his, the way she made a small sound of surprise and pleasure, the way his hands found her waist and hers slid up to his shoulders. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, and then deeper as they both gave in to what they had been holding back. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Zachary rested his forehead against hers. "That was worth waiting for," he murmured. "It was." Orna smiled. "Should we have dinner? I am starving, and I believe the inn serves food downstairs." They went down to the common room hand in hand, and if anyone stared at the sight of a human man and an orc woman together, neither of them cared. They ate stew and bread and drank ale, talking and laughing like the world outside did not exist. It was the happiest Zachary had been in years, perhaps ever, and from the light in Orna's eyes, he thought she felt the same. Over the next week, they settled into life in Greymark. Zachary found work with the local blacksmith, an older man named Thomas who was happy to have an extra pair of skilled hands. Orna was hired at the stable, where her strength and natural way with animals made her a valuable addition. They found a small cottage to rent on the edge of town, a simple place with 2 rooms and a garden that Orna immediately declared she wanted to plant vegetables in. Life was good. Better than good. They worked during the day and came home to each other at night, cooking simple meals and talking about their days. Orna taught Zachary some of the orc language, and he taught her to read better, as she had only basic literacy. They fit together as though they had been made for each other, 2 people from different worlds who had found common ground in kindness and understanding. But the peace did not last. 2 months after they arrived in Greymark, trouble came in the form of Orna's former clan. They rode into town at midday, a dozen orc warriors on horseback, and began searching for her. Zachary was at the smithy when word reached him, and he ran toward the stable, his heart in his throat. He found Orna facing down the clan leader, a massive orc male with ritual scars covering his arms and chest. The other stable workers had fled, leaving Orna alone with the warriors, and Zachary skidded to a stop beside her, breathing hard. "Zachary, no," Orna said urgently. "Go. This is not your fight." "Like hell it is not." He turned to face the clan leader. "What do you want with her?" The leader looked at him with contempt. "Human, this is clan business. Leave before you are hurt." "No, Orna is under my protection." "If you have business with her, you have business with me." "Zachary, please." Orna's voice was strained. "They will kill you. Then they will have to kill me." He did not move from her side. The clan leader studied them both, then laughed, a harsh sound. "So the traitor has found herself a pet human. How pathetic." "I am no traitor," Orna said, her voice ringing with authority. "I refuse to murder children. That is not treachery. That is honor. You refused an order from your war chief. You put humans above your own people. That is the definition of treachery." The leader crossed his massive arms. "You were left to die as punishment, yet here you stand. It seems that punishment was insufficient." "She was chained in a cellar for 5 days without food or water," Zachary said, anger rising in him. "What more do you want? Her death. Nothing else will satisfy the debt." "No." Zachary stepped forward, placing himself fully between Orna and the warriors. "You will not touch her, not today, not ever." The leader's eyes narrowed. "You would die for this traitor. She is no traitor. She is a woman of honor and courage, worth more than all of you combined, And yes, I would die for her, but I would prefer we all walk away from this alive. There's no walking away, our law is clear. Then your law is wrong. Orna stepped up beside Zachary again. And I will not let Zachary die for me. If you want my blood, take it, but let him go. No, Zachary grabbed her hand. We are in this together. The clan leader looked at their joined hands, something unreadable crossing his face. You love her. I do. And you? He directed the question at Orna. Do you love this human? With everything I am, Orna said without hesitation. There was a long silence. The other warriors shifted restlessly, waiting for their leader's command. Zachary tensed, ready to fight even though he knew they could not win. But he would not let them take Orna without a fight. He would not let her face this alone. Finally, the leader sighed. There is an old law, older than the one I came to enforce. A law from before the wars, when orcs and humans sometimes married and built lives together. It says that if an orc finds a mate from another race who will stand with them unto death, the orc is no longer bound by clan law. They become their own clan, their own family. Zachary felt hope flare. Does that law still hold? Technically, though it has not been invoked in generations. The leader looked at Orna. Is this human truly your mate? Would you swear it before witnesses? Yes, absolutely yes. And you, human, would you swear to be her mate, to stand by her against all challenges, to forsake your own people if they threaten her? I would. Zachary squeezed Orna's hand. I swear it. The leader nodded slowly. Then by the old law I recognize your bond. Orna Greydusk, you are cast out from the Greydusk clan, but you are not clanless. You are Orna of the Owens clan now, if your mate will have it so. I will, Zachary said. Then it is done. We will not pursue you again. But you are not welcome in orc lands, and if we meet in battle, this protection does not extend. The leader turned to his warriors. Mount up, we leave. They rode out as quickly as they had come, leaving Zachary and Orna standing in the stable yard, still holding hands and trying to process what had just happened. Slowly, other people began to emerge from where they had hidden, staring at the two of them. Did that just happen? Orna asked faintly. I think we just got married, sort of, in orc custom at least. Zachary turned to face her fully. Are you all right with that? Am I all right with being your mate, your wife? Zachary, it is all I want, but I do not want you to feel trapped by an old law. I do not feel trapped, I feel lucky. He cupped her face in his hands. I love you, Orna. I want to spend my life with you. If we are married in orc custom now, then let us be married in human custom too, properly, with witnesses and celebration. Tears spilled down her cheeks. You want to marry me, more than anything. Will you be my wife? Yes. Yes, 1,000 times yes. He kissed her there in the stable yard, not caring who was watching, and she kissed him back with joy and relief and love. When they broke apart, they were both smiling so hard their faces hurt. We should tell Thomas, Zachary said, and find the town elder or whoever performs marriages here. We should. But first, just let me hold you for a moment. Orna wrapped her arms around him, and he held her close, feeling her heartbeat against his chest. I cannot believe this is real. A month ago I was chained in the dark, and now I am free and in love and about to be married. How is this my life? Because you survived. Because you are strong and brave and good. And because I happened to be looking for shelter during a storm. He pulled back to smile at her. Best decision I ever made, going into that old fort. Best thing that ever happened to me, you coming down those stairs. They walked back toward town hand in hand, and by evening the whole settlement knew that the human smith and the orc stable hand were getting married. Thomas insisted on throwing them a party at the inn, and the townspeople, who had come to respect both Zachary and Orna in their time there, turned out to celebrate with them. The actual wedding took place 3 days later in the town square. The elder, a dignified woman named Margaret, performed a simple but beautiful ceremony. Zachary wore his best shirt, cleaned and mended, and Orna wore a dress that the innkeeper's wife had insisted on making for her, simple green fabric that brought out the color of her skin and eyes. They spoke their vows in front of the whole town, promising to love and honor each other, to stand together against whatever came, to build a life based on trust and partnership. When Margaret pronounced them married, Zachary kissed his wife with tears in his eyes, and Orna kissed him back with equal emotion. The celebration lasted well into the night. There was music and dancing, food and drink, and countless toasts to the happy couple. Even the other orc from the stable came to wish them well, clearly moved by seeing one of his own kind find acceptance and love. Finally, as the stars wheeled overhead and the party began to wind down, Zachary and Orna slipped away to their cottage. They walked in comfortable silence, hands linked, until they reached their door. Zachary opened it and turned to Orna with a grin. "I believe there is a tradition about carrying the bride over the threshold. You cannot carry me. I am too heavy. Want to bet?" He scooped her up before she could protest, making her laugh and grab onto his shoulders. He carried her inside and kicked the door shut behind them, setting her down gently in the middle of their small front room. "See, easy, show off." But she was smiling as she said it, her eyes soft in the candlelight. "Husband, wife." He pulled her close, swaying slightly as though they were still dancing. "How does it feel? Perfect, terrifying, wonderful." She rested her head on his shoulder. "Like coming home." "Yes, exactly that." They stood there holding each other for a long time, both thinking about the journey that had brought them here. From a dark cellar and iron chains to this moment of perfect happiness. From enemies by birth to partners by choice to spouses by love. "No one chains you down ever again," Zachary murmured, repeating the promise he had made that first night. "No one chains either of us down," Orna corrected. "We are free together. Together." They kissed, soft and sweet at first, then deeper as the kiss kindled into something more. Zachary led her to their bedroom, pausing only to light a candle on the bedside table. In the warm glow, they undressed each other slowly, reverently, exploring the map of scars and skin that told the story of lives hard lived. When they came together, it was with tenderness and passion in equal measure, two souls joining as completely as two bodies. Afterward, they lay tangled in the sheets, Zachary tracing idle patterns on Orna's shoulder while she played with his fingers. "I never thought I would have this," she said softly. "A home, a partner, a future worth looking forward to. Neither did I. I thought I would just keep traveling, working, never really connecting with anyone." He kissed her forehead. "I am so glad I was wrong. So am I." She shifted to look at him. "Do you think we will face more trouble from your people or mine? Probably. But we will face it together. That makes all the difference." "It does." She smiled. "Tell me something. That first night when you brought me to your camp, did you know then?" "Know what?" "That you would fall in love with me." Zachary thought about it. "No, but I think some part of me hoped. There was something about you, even exhausted and angry and chained in the dark. You were strong, unbroken. I wanted to know you, to understand what made you so resilient. And now you do. And now I do, and I love every part of you. Even the parts that are orc, the parts that your people fear and hate, especially those parts. They are what make you who you are." He cupped her face. "I do not love you despite being an orc, Orna. I love you, all of you, including that part of your identity." Fresh tears sparkled in her eyes. "How did I get so lucky?" "I ask myself the same thing every day." They fell asleep like that, wrapped in each other's arms, and woke to sunlight streaming through the window and the sound of birds singing. It was a new day, the first day of their married life, and they faced it with hope and joy. Over the following months, Zachary and Orna built their life together in Greymark. They worked hard, saved their money, and began making improvements to their cottage. Orna's garden flourished, providing vegetables for their table and extras to sell at market. Zachary's reputation as a skilled smith grew, bringing more work and better pay. They faced prejudice occasionally. Some people could not accept the idea of a human and orc together. But more often than not, they found acceptance and even friendship. The townspeople saw how devoted they were to each other, how hard they worked, how they contributed to the community. Slowly, attitudes shifted. One evening in early autumn, nearly 6 months after their wedding, they sat in their garden watching the sunset. Orna was shelling peas for dinner, and Zachary was sketching designs for a new gate he had been commissioned to make. "I have news," Orna said, setting down the bowl of peas. Something in her tone made Zachary look up. "Good news or bad news?" "Good news. At least I think it is good news." "I hope you think so too." She took a deep breath. "I am pregnant." Zachary stared at her for a moment, processing, and then a grin split his face. "Truly, truly. I am about 2 months along. I wanted to be sure before I told you." He dropped his sketchbook and pulled her into his arms, laughing with joy. "That is amazing. That is wonderful. We are going to have a baby." "We are. Are you happy?" "Happy, Orna. I am thrilled. Terrified, but thrilled." He pulled back to look at her. "How are you feeling? Are you all right?" "Do you need anything?" "I am fine. A little queasy in the mornings, but fine. The midwife says everything looks normal." She smiled. "We are going to be parents, Zachary." "We are." He placed a hand gently on her stomach, which was still flat but held their child. "Boy or girl, human or orc or something in between, they are going to be so loved." "So loved," Orna agreed, covering his hand with hers. The baby came in late spring, a healthy boy with his mother's green skin and pointed ears but his father's eyes and softer features. They named him Julian, after Zachary's brother, and Kellen, an orc name that Orna's mother had loved. Julian Kellen Owens came into the world screaming and did not stop until he was placed in his mother's arms, whereupon he quieted immediately and looked up at her with solemn dark eyes. "He is perfect," Zachary whispered, tears streaming down his face as he looked at his wife and son. "He is ours," Orna said, equally tearful. "Our little miracle." They brought Julian home to a cottage that the whole town had helped prepare. There was a cradle that Thomas had carved, blankets that the innkeeper's wife had sewn, and toys that various neighbors had contributed. The townspeople had embraced this child before he was even born, seeing him as a symbol of what was possible when people chose love over hate. Raising Julian was not always easy. He grew fast, strong like his mother but curious like his father. He had a temper when crossed, but also a deep capacity for empathy and kindness. Zachary and Orna worked together to teach him about both his heritages, making sure he knew pride in being both human and orc. "You are not half of anything," Orna told him when he was old enough to understand. "You are whole. You are all of both of us, and that makes you unique and precious." Julian grew up knowing he was loved, knowing his parents' story, knowing that his very existence was proof that bridges could be built between divided peoples. He played with human and orc children alike in Greymark, which had become a haven for mixed families and those seeking escape from the prejudices of the wider world. Years passed. Zachary's smithy grew into a successful business, and Orna eventually opened her own stable, breeding and training horses. They had 2 more children, a daughter named Mara with Zachary's human features and her mother's fierce spirit, and another son, Daniel, who looked more human than orc but had his mother's strength. Through it all, their love never wavered. They supported each other through difficult times, and celebrated together through good times. They built not just a family but a legacy, proving that love could transcend the boundaries that society tried to impose. On their 10th wedding anniversary, they stood in their garden, now lush and expansive, watching their children play. Julian was 12, already nearly as tall as Orna. Mara was 8, climbing a tree despite her parents' warnings. Daniel was 5, toddling after his siblings with determination. "Do you remember that night in the fort?" Zachary asked, sliding an arm around Orna's waist. "Every detail. Sometimes I still dream about it, about being in the dark and then seeing your torch on the stairs." She leaned into him. "You gave me my life back that night. You gave me a life worth living. Before you, I was just drifting. Now I have purpose, family, love." He kissed her temple. "Best storm I ever got caught in." Orna laughed. "Are you ever going to stop saying that?" "Never. It is our origin story. How the slight man freed the bound orc woman and they lived happily ever after. Except we are still living it, still writing it every day, even better." Zachary tightened his arm around her. "I love you, Orna Owens, now and always. And I love you, Zachary Owens, forever." Their children called for them then, wanting them to come play, and they went together, hand in hand, into the golden afternoon light. Behind them, the cottage stood solid and welcoming, a home built on love and freedom. Ahead of them stretched years yet to come, filled with challenges and joys, but always faced together. The chains were gone. The darkness was past, and in their place was light, laughter, and a love that had transformed two broken people into a whole family. It was not the ending of their story, but rather the continuation of a tale that began with a simple act of kindness and grew into something beautiful and enduring. No one would ever chain them down again. They were free together, and that freedom was the greatest gift they could give each other and their children. It was a legacy of hope in a world that too often chose division, a testament to the power of seeing people as individuals rather than enemies. As the sun set over Greymark, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, the Owens family gathered in their garden for dinner. There was bread that Orna had baked, vegetables from their garden, and fish that Zachary and Julian had caught that morning in the stream. It was simple food, but it tasted perfect because they shared it together. "Tell us the story again," Mara demanded as they ate, "about how you and Mama met." Zachary and Orna exchanged a smile. They had told the story countless times, but their children never tired of hearing it. "Well," Zachary began, "it was a stormy night and I was looking for shelter." And as he told the tale once more, his wife beside him and his children listening with rapt attention, Zachary felt a profound sense of gratitude for the storm that had sent him to that old fort, for the courage to free a captive, and for the love that had grown from that one act of compassion. It was a simple story in many ways, but it was theirs, and it had given them this beautiful, complicated, perfect life. No one could ask for anything more.